All right, class. First off, as always, good day. I'm glad you're here. So, today we're going to be going over some pretty simple knowledge stuff on government. And these are things that you would probably see on a government citizen quiz, you know. Um, Now, my grandparents came to this country, illegally, but they became American citizens. And I remember helping them study for the quiz and stuff like that. So some of these questions are stuff from my memory that I'm like, oh yeah, I remember they asked these questions. And I was reading an article like some months ago, back I believe it was during a winter break, where it was saying like only like 30 some percent of our country's citizens could actually pass one of these citizen tests. So I'm hoping to make you guys part of the 30% instead of the 70%, of people. So let's go ahead and get started. So here's your warm up picture. Basically, what's asking you is what is this artist trying to say about the president, which is FDR right there, and the Constitution? So look at what he's wearing. Look at the paper where it says the Constitution. You might notice something on that paper. Okay. So analyze it, break it down, write your response, okay? Because we're moving on in three, two, one. So, number one question that would definitely be on a citizen quiz is this: how many branches are there in our government and which branches are there? Well, there are three, okay? Our government is made up of three branches: legislative, executive, judicial. Now, thing is, it's very tempting for people to be like, Congress, the president, and the judges. Would they be right? Yeah. Okay. But the technical term for each one of them is legislative, executive, and judicial. Now, this next part is definitely a question they would ask too. Where does our government get their power from? Well, a lot of people would like to say, oh, they get it from the people, which they would be right, but they're talking about the document that says where the government gets their power from, and that's the Constitution. Okay. The Constitution says what power each branch gets, what they can do, what they can't do. Okay. So, Article 1 talks about the power of the legislative branch, Congress, what they can and can't do. We'll be talking about them next week. Okay. Article 2 is about the powers of the president, the executive branch. We'll be talking about that next week as well on the Wednesday or Thursday, whichever day you have me. The last one is Article 3, which is the power of the judicial branch. Now, we will not be going over the judicial branch. Okay. Again, crash course in this in government. We don't have enough time. So in this lesson, I'm actually going to be talking about the Supreme Court. And what I'm sharing with you is probably more the most important stuff. Okay. Now, beauty and the genius of our government is this: there is a system of checks and balances. Okay. Our founding fathers, they didn't trust anybody, they didn't even trust themselves. They know how people are. So they knew chances are one side, either one branch, legislative, executive, judicial, one of them may try to, exceed their powers, try to become more powerful or become corrupt. So they made sure to put a system of checks and balances that made sure that the other two branches could knock down the other ones by a peg. So let's say the president says, I want to make a law. Well, Congress would then be like, well, you don't make laws, we make laws. That's not your job. Your job is to enforce the laws. Now, if the president goes, well, hey, I can make the laws, I'll use the executive decisions, executive clauses, you know. The judicial branch would then look and say, well, let's look at that law. Oh, that's an illegal law because you're trampling the rights of certain citizens. The court's going to say no one has to follow that law because it's illegal. Okay. So that's what I mean by checks and balances. Now, think of like a tree when you think about government. You got the trunk representing the government, and then you got three branches: legislative, executive, judicial. With the legislative branch, just imagine that branch then splitting into two little parts. Okay. Those two parts are Congress. That's the House of Representatives and the Senate. Now, this is definitely a question they would ask you. How many seats are there for the Senate? And there are 100 seats. Okay. Why is there 100? Because every state gets two senators. Doesn't matter how big, how small, how many people are in that state, doesn't matter. Size does not matter in the Senate. Every state gets two. Okay. Now, where size does matter is the House of Representatives. Oh, before I move on, um, so going back to the Senate really quickly, like I told today's class, let's say Puerto Rico, which is our territory, we own it. The United States owns it. Let's say they become a state. Well, they would get two senators. So then we would have 102 senators. Okay. Now let's go back again for fast forwarding to the House of Representatives. In total, there are 435 seats. Okay. And the number is divided by the population. Okay. Not every state's going to be like, oh, you have a lot, so you're at 30. You have a lot too, you're at 30. No, it's how much people do you have? So California, which is the most populated state that we have in our union, um, let's see, my love, um, because we have a lot of people, and even though people are leaving our state, it doesn't matter. Those people think, oh, I'm making a big impact in California. Not really. Oh, all these people leaving California, they're making an impact. No, there's still a lot of people here in California. So the number of representatives we have is 56. The next state that has a big number is like Texas. They have like 40. And then like after that, it's like I believe it's no, wait, Florida. They have like 36. New York has like 32, you know. So it just goes down more depending on the population. Here's the thing, every state has to have at least one representative. And again, it doesn't matter the size. So, like the state of Montana, it's huge, it's massive. Problem is, there's more people living in like LA or San Francisco than there is people living in the entire state of Montana. Okay. So that's why Montana only has like one or two representatives. That's it. They don't have any more than that. Okay. So again, House of Representatives depends on how many people live in your state. That's how much power you have. Now, the Supreme Court judges. Um, Several years ago, I heard some people who think they know a lot about government talking out of their rear ends because they were saying something to the effect of, well, President Trump can just appoint another judge. He can put as many judges he wants. No, no, no. The president can nominate a judge. He just can't say, oh, I want you to be a Supreme Court judge. He can't do that. Congress decides how many judges there should be. Okay? Not the president. The president nominates, says, I think this person should be a Supreme Court justice. Okay? The Congress decides how many judges. Now, if there's any job you should really want, it's a Supreme Court justice. Because these guys, they have the job for life. Okay. They could be horrible judges, which some of them are, some of them have been, but thing is they have that job for life. We've had judges die in their office, just reading a book, writing a response to a court case, whatever, and next thing you know, people come in their office and they're dead. It's happened, you know. Another way one of these guys can, not have the job anymore is that they retire, they quit, which has happened, or they commit a crime. And if they commit a crime, they get impeached. Now, I know a lot of you guys are used to that term being associated with the president, and that is true. The president can get impeached. Basically, anyone who's in government who has a political office can get impeached. Judges, presidents, congressmen, if they break the law, they can get impeached. Now, how many judges have we had that, like the highest number? That's been 10. The fewest we ever had when we first started, we only had 5. Okay. But since 1869, we have had 9 Supreme Court justices. And that picture right there is the most recent one of them all. Okay. The youngest person is the lady on the top row to your left, that white lady right there. She's 52 years old, and her name is Justice Coney Barrett. Sorry. The oldest member is the guy right below her. That is Clarence Thomas. He's 75 years old. Okay. And the guy next to Clarence Thomas, the one like dead smack in the middle on the bottom row, that is Chief Justice Roberts. Okay. Now, I remember this question being asked um, on my grandparents' little paper to study. And it said, what's the difference between the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution? And they basically had to you know, either say it or write it out. Now, here's the difference. The Declaration of Independence is exactly what it sounds like. We are declaring to the world, announcing it, that we are free from Britain. We're basically saying we're no longer part of Britain. We are our own country. We are establishing our own independence and we're ready to fight for it. That's all it is, right? It's a notice to the world. The Constitution, on the other hand, is basically, if you think about if you want to think about it like a game, it's the instructions. It's how we're going to set up our government, what kind of government is it where we have kings, queens, an oligarchy, people voting for the leader, things like that, and lists what power the government has, what rights the citizens have. So if you really want to think about it, it's like instructions. Like if you're going to set up a government, this is how we set up ours. These are what they do, their powers, and these are the rights that citizens have. That's basically it. That's the difference. The other one is one of the things that we as Americans try to hold dear and really try to embrace. And it's just sad because things have turned. Okay. But there's a thing called the rule of law. And basically, it states that everyone must follow the law. Leaders must obey the law, and the government must obey the law, and no one is above the law. And like I said, when our country first started, they held on to that ideal. They're like, yeah, no one's above the law. Everyone has to follow it. The government must obey. The leaders must obey. But like some students did point out in class today and yesterday, that nowadays people with power, with money, they get away with a lot of stuff. You know, they might kill somebody driving recklessly, things like that, and they get a slap on the wrist. Whereas if you and me, we steal a bag of chips, we're going to jail. Is that fair? No. But that's the thing. It's sad, but it's something we should strive for and make sure that it is followed as citizens. Especially the last one. No one is above the law. All right, so that is the end of this lesson. So hopefully you learned something new. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Um, so you guys, with that being said, you take care, you be safe, and I'll see you guys later. Okay.